Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, are you alright? Mrs. Sato? Ah, conscious again at last. A blessed relief, my dear fellow. After all, to drop dead after a murdered licking by a small terrier, most unseemly. What is or isn't seemly is irrelevant to me here, Mr. Sholmes. I am so glad there is no lasting damage. How are you feeling? I'm fine, thank you. Did you bring me back here? What's this on my head? A bandage. Sadly, we had no ice, so that's a compress of sugar water. Sugar water? Don't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. It's a first aid treatment that my father taught me. Oh, thank you. So, let's take tea when you're feeling up to it. But of course, no sugar in the patient's cup. Ugh, the bump on my head is throbbing sweetly enough, don't worry. Hee. Whenever you feel ready, then. So, still got the trunk, seems. Have you seen this huge gash across the side of the trunk here? It's gone right through the leather and into the metal behind. Gosh, for a metal chest like this to have been so badly damaged, whatever made the gash must have struck the side of the trunk with considerable force. I wonder how it happened. Oh, look at this dark stain here. Do you think... Yes, I'm afraid so. I think it's blood. Ugh, I knew you were gonna say that. So that presumably means that this was present at the scene when Inspector Gregson was killed. It's the most logical conclusion, yes. To think Jean has been carrying this around with her. If you didn't know any better, I suppose it does look like a grease stain from all the fish and chips. Let's have a look inside. Oh. Look, there's something inside. Oh, let's see. It appears to be a passport, authorizing him to travel overseas. Was Inspector Gregson about to go on a trip abroad then? Perhaps the date of departure might tell us something. That was... Oh, what is it? It was for travel on the 31st of October, just one day before the incident. What? Really? Gregson went to France the day before his body was discovered? And that's about it, I guess? It's all the noteworthy things. Oh! Do you see that? There's something stuck in the side of the trunk there. It's glinting. It looks like a fragment of metal of some sort. But it's wedged in so tightly I can't remove it. Well, don't cut yourself. You'd better leave it, I think. Interesting. What's going on here? Very interesting. Okay. I think that's all we can discover. Tobias Gregson, date of departure within 1 week from 31st of October. Destination Dunkirk, France. Police business. Permission for the applicant and one additional person to travel. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Sholmes. My dear fellow, think nothing of it. I must say I was quite startled when I heard that you had been attacked by a dog. For a moment I feared that infamous murderer of so many years had come back from the dead. You mean the professor? Fortunately, I see your prize throat is unscathed. That stiff, turned-up collar of yours obviously afforded some welcome protection. Was I that close to death? All I really remember is the dog licking my face over and over again. Well, if you wish to avoid such troubles in future, a little mustard spread on the cheeks should do the trick. I should think that would balance the sweetness of your bandage rather splendidly. Right. Okay. I guess we should go downstairs then. A spot of tea, perhaps. 2nd of November, Sholmes is sweet. What on earth is going on in here? Am I having a bad dream? Ah, no, it's an old German folk song. Rather a fine rendition, I think. That's the least of my concerns. Iris? Iris, what's the matter? Who is that sprawling, that relaxed gentleman over there? Iris, she even listening? Excuse me, sir. I do apologize for troubling you whilst you're singing so merrily, but would you be kind enough to explain the situation? Well, that worked. A crooning gentleman and a mute young girl. A rather tantalizing juxtaposition. And one that appears to have incited the gods of deduction within me to find their voices too. Mr. Sholmes, do you mean... The strains of reasoning within me are playing now as a delightful duet. One melody sings of a reunion full of nostalgia, whilst the other is a morose theme about the great secret you're trying so desperately to conceal, Iris. She's turned as white as a sheet. So as usual, you've instantly seen to the very heart of the matter. And by the time my own brief performance is over, I feel sure this gentleman's song will reach its finale. So then, to Music Land, where all is sweetness and delicacy and harmony. Pray do enjoy Sherlock Holmes' latest logic and reasoning spectacular. Firstly, we consider the gentleman's nationality. Clearly, he is a German with no grasp of the English language, as evidenced by the Germanic song he sings and his apparent inability to understand when asked to desist. So, why is the man here at all, and in such apparently high spirits? The answer, of course, Iris, is clearly known to you. Indeed, we need only follow the gaze of those bright young eyes to unravel that particular part of this mystery. The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the herbal tea. You obviously offered our German guest a cup of your latest herbal blend. The tea's delectable flavors made the man's spirits soar, and resulted in this joyful ditty tumbling incessantly from his lips. I eagerly await sampling the flavor myself, that I may join the fellow in his state of elation. Now, to the next question. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly of the settee? As it happens, a number of years ago now, a certain gentleman of German origin engaged my services in solving a particularly delicate case. He required the retrieval of letters once sent to an acquaintance that might have proved problematic. In order to conceal his noble identity, he also arrived at my office in a mask. The gentleman's name was Wilhelm Gottschalk Sigismund von Ormstein, the King of Germany. If my memory serves, the mask worn by this gentleman is identical. Yes, there can be no question. That mask belongs to the King of Germany. It would appear that His Majesty remembers the fine service I afforded him, and has decided to show his face again, mask and all, in order to express his gratitude. A well-mannered monarch indeed, wouldn't you agree, my dear fellow? So the identity of this masked visitor is in fact my former client, the King of Germany. Indeed, his son is currently in London as well, enjoying the wonders of the Great Exhibition. Right. Okay. Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Yes, you, young Iris. But your apparently inexplicable silence is unable to hide the truth. Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that knapsack. A £5 note, I believe. I must say, as your compatriot, I am deeply saddened. It would appear that you've allowed yourself to be bribed into silence by His Royal Highness, earning yourself some spending money in exchange for keeping quiet about the King's secret. And now, the final piece of the puzzle. What is this secret you strive to hide with your silence, Iris? Ah, yes, we need only to follow that brief, involuntary twitch of your eyes to find the answer. You were attempting to abscond with that coffee cup. My favorite coffee cup, in fact. Or should I say, the handle of my favorite coffee cup. It appears that His High-Spirited Highness broke it in the midst of his hijinks. Which leads us to the sad truth. My favorite coffee cup has been broken by the King of Germany, and Iris, you tried to conceal it from me. I shall have a bill sent via governmental channels to the German royal family for its replacement. Thus concludes Sherlock Holmes' great deduction of this painful puzzle. With your silence as well, the fellow's jovial warbling rather rings in the ears, does it not? Mr. Sholmes, I must say something that does rather trouble me. Pray, Mrs. Otto, do tell. His Royal Highness doesn't appear to have moved a muscle since we arrived. Ah, and you haven't said a word either, Iris. If Mr. Sholmes has it all right, you might as well own up to it now. Your reasoning isn't entirely without substance, I must admit. And one other thing, Mr. Sholmes. Yet another grievance, Mr. Naruhodo? Surely not. Well, I actually read the story of that case recently, the one you were just describing. And according to that at least, it wasn't the King of Germany, it was the King of Bohemia. Goodness, was it? Yes, that's quite true. Master Gotz, the prince, testified to that in court. In his words, I have come to see the great exhibition all the way from my home in Bohemia. I would ask you to keep that minor error to yourselves. It could easily become quite a scandal. I believe, Mr. Naruhodo, that it's our turn now to make some corrections to a number of minor errors that may have slipped in. Yeah, even Mr. Sholmes is willing to admit he might be slightly wide of the mark this time. Although it's clear that Iris is definitely hiding something. We need to find out the truth behind this mysterious scene. But one truth is uncontrollable. My favorite coffee cup is no more. So, shall we embark again on a joint presentation of Sherlock Holmes' logic and reasoning spectacular? Hold there, Mr. Holmes. Firstly, we consider the gentleman's nationality. Clearly, he is a German with no grasp of the English language, as evidenced by the Germanic song he sings and his apparent inability to understand when asked to desist. So, why is the man here at all, and in such apparently high spirits? The answer, of course, Iris, is clearly known to you. Indeed, we need only follow the gaze of those bright young eyes to unravel that particular part of the mystery. The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the herbal tea. So what? It's some mix of herbs that gives you the urge to sing? Goodness, I should like to try some. And I'd like to hear you singing, but this man, just how long does he intend to keep up with that tune, do you suppose? As I said, he's been stock still the entire time, and if you look closely, his lips aren't moving either. Ah, so I'm not sure what's actually responsible for his spirited singing. But I suspect the answer lies at the end of Iris's gaze. Well, the cup's empty, that's for sure. So I suppose this mysterious gentleman must have drank the contents. Iris's special buns are quite delicious, I agree. They always make my heart sing. So I can understand wanting to vocalize those feelings, certainly. In fact, Mr. Naruhodo, you often erupt in boisterous laughter after drinking Iris's tea. I do? Maybe I should take some lighter laughter lessons from Sasada-san in the near future. We know this mask. Oh, you're right. So, does that mean... No, surely not. It couldn't be... Could it? No, it's definitely not him. Oh, no, of course not. Thank goodness. But then, why is this gentleman now wearing it? I am afraid once again, I really have no idea. Alright, yeah, it's the gramophone. Wait, this is a gramophone, still rarely seen in our own country. The sound certainly appears to be coming from the horn. A machine singing? That can't be right. Science and technology are changing the world rapidly, Mr. Naruhodo. What's right is changing too. Ugh, it's too much for my brain. Well, at least we've found our answer.
Take that!
The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the gramophone. Indeed, for no well-bred gentleman would break into an obscure folk song with making a social call. In other words, this gentleman isn't singing at all. In fact, it would appear that the fellow is unconscious. Ah, the music seems to have stopped now. I ask you, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? Why would I have purchased a recording of that gibberish? How should I know? Well, never mind. On with the deduction. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly of the settee? As it happens, a number of years ago now, a certain gentleman of German origin engaged my services in solving a particularly delicate case. He required the retrieval of letters once sent to an acquaintance that might have proved problematic. In order to conceal his noble identity, he also arrived at my office in a mask. The gentleman's name was Wilhelm Gottschalk Sigmund von Ormstein, the King of Germany. If my memory serves, the mask worn by this gentleman is identical. Yes, there can be no question. That mask belongs to the King of Germany. Although we've already established that it was actually the King of Bohemia, it seems Mr. Sholmes intends to persist with his Germany theory for some reason. Come to think of it, the young prince was wearing a mask as well, wasn't he? Master Gotz, the boy whom you had in tears. Don't remind me, or anyone else. Do you suppose all members of the aristocracy of mainland Europe wear masks? I'm sure they do. Well, probably anyway. The point is, that mask doesn't belong to any king. No, that's right, as we all know. Because we can identify the true owner of this mask. How old is she? 19. Oh, nice. Old enough.
Take that!
Yes, there can be no question. That mask belongs to Kazuma Asogi. In other words, my memory is sublimely unreliable. Only you could try to make that sound positive. Kazuma's mask has been languishing on this metal chest for several days, though that doesn't explain why the gentleman is wearing it now. But it is now a simple matter to determine our guest's true identity. After all, the gentleman is unconscious. We need only excuse ourselves in advance. Gently lift the mask and peer beneath it. I don't believe it. Oh! Father! I'm afraid, Mrs. Otter, you must be mistaken. No, I think not, Mr. Sholmes. Then it would appear our logic and reasoning has once again revealed the truth. This mysterious visitor is my unconscious father, Eugen Makatoba. Logic and reasoning, or just looking and saying? Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Yes, you, young Iris. But your apparently inexplicable silence is unable to hide the truth. Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that knapsack. So that's a £5 note poking out from Iris's knapsack, is it? Oh dear, I can't be sure. Most money that we encounter is in coin form. I know. I'm not even sure if we've seen any banknotes here in Britain at all, have we? But anyway, Father would never have paid money for Iris's silence. He certainly seems like the silent type himself, though, judging by his present state. There must be some other reason for Iris's silence, I suppose. Perhaps what Iris is trying so hard not to give away with her eyes is something entirely different. If it's not the knapsack, then what could it be? It has to be something else. Something else in her possession. Oh. Huh. Now I think about it, Iris always wears that little bag on her back, doesn't she? Yes, that's right. Though it's easy to forget about it because you can't see it from the front. There are 2 little felt dolls attached to it as well. Are there? I had no idea. I don't remember ever seeing them before. Is it possible there's always a £5 note poking out from her bag that I just haven't noticed before, too? I couldn't say with absolute certainty, but I think it's unlikely. So... This slipper features in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, doesn't it? It does. When I first saw it there on the mantelpiece, I very near fainted with excitement. Doesn't Iris keep her 11s in there? Yes, that part was never mentioned in the stories. You could swap it for the Japanese equivalent of a slipper for fun. In other words, for a wooden gaita sandal. But then it wouldn't be possible to hide anything inside. Which matters because... Alright. This metal chest? Oh, this metal chest. It contains important documents, doesn't it? Yes, details of all the cases Mr. Sholmes has worked on over the years. Written up by Iris' father, if I'm remembering correctly. Iris insists that the chest is kept locked at all times. She's never once shown me inside. Well, its contents are invaluable to her, I suppose, and entirely irreplaceable. But look at it now. The catch is unlocked for once. But so it is. That's hard to ignore. Very. I've never seen that chest unlocked before, in all the time we've been staying here at Baker Street.
Take that!
There we go. Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that metal chest. An excellent observation, for upon closer inspection there is something different about the chest's appearance. It's kept locked at all times, yet now that catch is open. Evidently this has something to do with your refusal to speak, Iris. But it's a simple enough matter to incite you to speak, I am sure. I merely need open this chest. Here we go. No! Wait it down! Oh! 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 Mr. Sholmes? Mr. Sholmes, allez! He's dead. Never. Oh, Ellie, I told you not to open it. Ah, so you found your voice now, Iris. In other words, what just happened clearly reveals the truth here. Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is... This is somewhat different to the usual dance of deduction you perform with Mr. Sholmes, isn't it? Well, he's left me alone on the ballroom floor, so I'm going to have to dance this next part solo. And anyway, I need to get to the bottom of this, for my own peace of mind. Now then, Iris isn't usually the silent type, so... You mean you don't actually know the answer yet, despite that knowing point of the finger before? Mr. Sato, sometimes a man needs to point his finger first and think later. Oh, well, if you say so. I think we'd better examine Iris more closely and try to rescue the situation then. Examine Iris more closely. Oh. That's the key she's holding, look. I'm sure that wasn't in her hands before, was it? No, you're quite right. It's appeared as if by magic. That's strange. A big old iron key. Where did it materialize from? Skirt. What? Iris always dresses in this frilly clothes, doesn't she? I've always thought this skirt is rather delightful. It's pretty sizable with all those frills. Sizable enough for a sizable secret. You seem to be rather fond of that idea. But you certainly can't go investigating further. Does it look like that's what I was thinking?
Take that!
Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is that key behind your back. When Mr. Jones was thrown into the air before, no, just before he called out to try to stop him, you slipped something out of your mouth. That something is the key now in your hands. No doubt the key to the chest. You're so clever, Uno. So now it becomes clear. Thanks to Mr. Sholmes' graphic demonstration, we can well imagine what happened here. But Professor Megatoba also opened that metal chest only to be punched into the air and land sprawled on the settee. But wait, that doesn't explain all the facts. What about the stylish scarf and the cup of tea? And above all, why would he be wearing Kazuma-sama's mask? Well, for those curious details, I can think of only one explanation. Clearly, an unbelievable miracle took place in this room. Isn't that right, Iris? Consider how the room was arranged before this whole painful experience took place. When Professor Megatoba opened the chest, completely unaware of what awaited him inside, the mask was flung into the air just as he was, only to land neatly on his face when it fell back down. And the teacup's journey through the air ended when it caught on the unconscious professor's finger. You mean to say that the stylish scarf is actually just a tablecloth? This is the great detective's office, after all, a place of miraculous deductions. Would you expect anything less? Yes, you're right. It happened exactly as you said. Brilliant, Reno. Thus concludes Renesque Naruhodo's great deduction of this punchy puzzle. So then, why don't I make a fresh pot of tea for us all?
Objection!
An admirable performance, Mr. Naruhodo. But in the final act of the show there, you rather missed everything of importance. Mr. Sholmes? If you would cast your mind back to my earlier deduction. Iris, clearly you're hiding a great secret. She is? From the look on her face. Mr. Sholmes must be right. Whatever that great secret is, the cat isn't out of the bag yet. So I put it to you again. You were attempting to abscond with that coffee cup. It really is a shame about Mr. Sholmes' cup. It must have been smashed when Professor Megatoba opened the chest. Oh dear, so many things seem to have been broken here. But now that the deduction has taken a different direction, Iris doesn't seem to be trying to hide the broken cup anymore. In other words, her great secret is something else. Let's put our observational skills to work here on one final time then. Oh. What's that? Look, there seems to be more papers there. Is Iris trying to hide them underneath the tray? The insignia, Mr. Naruhodo. It's an official Scotland Yard document. What? But why would Iris have... We must ask her. An official Scotland Yard document?
Take that!
You are attempting to abscond with that case file. Iris, as you know very well, nothing escapes the attention of a great detective. Oh no! We visited Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory earlier today, and Dr. Gorey informed us that the autopsy report of Clint Van Zeeks had gone missing. Clint Van Zeeks? Yes, I do seem to recall that some years ago I asked to see the report in question. You were with me, weren't you, Iris? You mean it was you, Iris? So those papers you have there are... I'm sorry. Forgive me. In truth, I would like to have thought I could have predicted the booby-trap chest, but it caught me completely off guard. I was very nearly the late consulting detective Sherlock Holmes. I'm sorry, Early. So you mean this autopsy report really is... Yes, I took it from the lab, even though I knew it was very important. Was there something in it that troubled you, Iris? Not exactly something that troubled me. Something I've been looking for. When I saw this report, when I saw the writing in it, I knew it was Daddy's. The writing? Your father's writing? What do you really mean? Iris, it must be something that's hard for her to talk about. Forgive me for interrupting, my dear fellows. Mr. Holmes, what is it? I feel as though the poor unconscious gentleman on the settee has been somewhat forgotten. Oh, Father. Perhaps we should find our guest somewhere more peaceful to rest? Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? Would you be so kind as to lend him your bed? We must do our very best to make him comfortable, I feel. Oh, yes, of course. I'll help you carry him up. So will I. No, I can manage alone, thank you. You have tea to enjoy. We wouldn't want Iris's brew to stew. Because there's no better way to make the professor comfortable than dragging him upstairs like a trunk. I wonder, perhaps that was deliberate. Maybe Mr. Holmes is making himself scarce to give Iris the chance to talk more freely. We must use this opportunity to talk with Iris and find out what's going on. What's going on, Iris? When I saw the writing on that report, I could hardly believe it. I know that handwriting, I thought to myself. Because it was the same as the writing you'd seen on your father's case notes. Exactly. I was desperate to compare the two properly. I needed to see them side by side. I asked the doctor in the laboratory, but I was told I couldn't take the report away. And even worse, I was told that that was the first and last time we'd be allowed even to look at it in there. So he decided to steal it. When I compared the autopsy report with the case notes I had here, there was no doubt. The handwriting was exactly the same. It was Daddy's. And the signature of the coroner at the bottom of the autopsy report. Read Dr. John H. Wilson. So that's how I finally found out. I learnt Daddy's name at last. I see. Ever since then, I've called myself Iris Wilson. And that's also when I had the brilliant idea of writing stories all about Daddy's exciting times with Early. I decided there and then I'd write The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Oh, Iris, I had no idea the stories had quite such a deep personal significance for you. I can see why the autopsy report was so important to her now. And why she was prepared to break the law to get her hands on it. Would you like to tell us about it, Iris? About your father? I'm sure I told you before, didn't I? That Daddy used to be Early's partner. Yes, and that notes about all the cases they solved together are kept inside that middle chest. That's right. Early told me, you see. He said that Daddy's somewhere far away now, so we can't meet. That's one way of describing it. Then, when I secretly unlocked the chest and read through the papers inside, I started to build up a picture in my head of what Daddy must be like. Well, that's only natural. You're just like any other girl of your age. I read that Daddy was a professor of medical science, so I studied and took my degree too. Well, that's only natural, I suppose. In that respect, you're not quite like any other girl of your age, though. But there was one thing that I could never find out. Daddy's name. His name wasn't anywhere on the notes that he'd made about his work with Early. But then one day... That's what happened, is it? When you saw this autopsy report, you finally managed to work it out. Is that right? Yeah. So it was the handwriting in the report that caught her eye. I must apologize, Iris. This is really all my fault. Early, I made a promise, you see, that until the time was right, I'd keep the details about your father a secret. I know, I've been very naughty. I'll take the autopsy report back to Dr. Gowrie and apologize, I promise. Yes, we'll go together, I think. Then, let me look after it for you until we get there. Might as well. Clint Van Zeeks, 33. Time of death, 31st of May, between 9 p.m. and midnight. Death from a single stab wound to the heart, other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. Recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand. No document and corresponding ink was found. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Credit to Inspector Wexler for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. No internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach. Huh. It's vague, but it's also interesting. Alright. I must go and water my herbs, I think. I'll see you all later. Poor Iris. She must be feeling awful. I know Mr. Sholmes is here for her, but still. What? How? What is the meaning of this, Mr. Sholmes? Mr. Sholmes? Oh, dear me. So, you have noticed, I see. But, that would mean... What on earth is the matter, Mr. Sato? You've turned as white as a sheet. It's this autopsy report, Mr. Naruhodo. The one from 10 years ago. The writing. Isn't Dr. Wilson's at all. Huh? What do you mean? How could you possibly know that? Because I know this writing very well. This writing is my father's. What? Professor Megatubas? Indeed, it's true. And now you know. My dear fellows. No, I don't know anything. What on earth does all of this mean, Mr. Sholmes? Because the idea that's slowly forming in my mind is just too extraordinary to believe. Please, you have to explain. So, this autopsy report was actually penned by Professor Megatoba, then? But that makes no sense. It's not possible. Surely. Not possible? My dear fellow, pray, take a deep breath and think again. Yes, you're right. In some ways, it actually makes a great deal of sense. It does? 10 years ago is when Father returned to Japan after his extended study tour in Britain. And prior to his return, where was Dr. Megatoba engaged? Of course. He was an assistant in Dr. Wilson's laboratory, learning about forensic science. And as an assistant, he would have aided with the dissection work, making detailed notes, which would be assembled into the full autopsy report. Once the work was complete, the head coroner would check the contents, and put his signature on the documents. In other words, the only writing of Dr. Wilson's in the report would be his signature at the end. I see. So Iris got the wrong end of the stick, you mean? She saw that and assumed the whole report had been written by Dr. John H. Wilson? Which is very understandable, of course. What a complicated situation. Thinking about it, most of what we know about you, Mr. Sholmes, comes from the published stories of your exploits. Yes, The Adventures of Sherlock Sholmes, written by Iris. And we really have no way of knowing what's fact and what's fiction. Most troubling for you, my dear fellow, I'm sure. So what about the supposed partner of yours? Did he really exist or not? Ah, you have come straight to the point, I see. And please come straight to the answer. I believe Iris explained it in one of her installments. He was a trusted comrade and the only person I could truly have called a friend. And did this partner of yours truly make a record of all your cases? Are his notes really stored inside that metal chest? Absolutely, madam. Absolutely. So, where's your partner now? We rarely meet. You see, he lives on the other side of the world. But if this autopsy report and the records of all your old cases were penned by the same hand, and if the autopsy report was written, though not signed, by your famous partner, there would be only one logical conclusion. Pray impress me. Your partner would have to be Eugen Megatoba? In other words, Mrs. Sato's father. Upon my word, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? You are coming along wonderfully. You have hit upon the method at last. You finally grasped the art of deduction. You mean to say... Allow me to introduce you to my great friend and partner, Megatoba. Professor Megatoba? Does this mean that you're the real Dr. Wilson?
Oh no, my dear, I am still my older self, Eugen Megatoba, your father.
Of course. This is obviously too much for Sasato-san to take in.
I must say though, how my old friend has attained worldwide celebrity as a great mystery solver is the greatest mystery of all.
I still remember the first time we met. Ah, pray mind me. Pray remind me, when was it again, Mekatoba?
16 years ago, Sholmes.
Ah, yes, quite. 16 years ago.
I just arrived from Japan with Cicero and Gensin. I was in search of lodgings close to the hospital. Some comfortable rooms at a reasonable price.
But rents are devilishly high in that particular area.
That's right, so I decided I needed someone to share lodgings at the expense. And was fortunate enough to be introduced to Sholmes, who found himself in a similar situation.
I was a callow fellow back then, a mere shadow of the great detective you see before you now. I was working at the hospital's chemical laboratory at the time, indulging my curiosities for little gain.
And the situation of our cohabitation led to us pursuing cases together, you see. Hard to believe it was a mere 6 years. We had our great many adventures.
But in the last year of Megatoba's stay in Britain, that most infamous of cases presented itself. The case with which you have become rather familiar yourselves, the Professor killings.
After the trial, Cicero and I were summoned back home.
Hardly surprising, given the circumstances. So there you have it. And as you know, all the details recorded by my trusty chronicler remains in that metal chest. This is just amazing. Professor Megatoba really is Mr. Sholmes' famous partner.
Father. Goodness, my dear, what a categoric!
As your daughter, I am very proud to learn that you are the great detective's great partner. But nevertheless, there is another mystery that I really must ask you to explain now.
And that is?
You know very well what it is. The unresolved matter of Iris's father. Of course, I'd almost forgotten about that one.
I should have seen this coming, I suppose.
Iris told us that all the notes about the great detective's adventures that are in that metal chest were written by her father. Isn't that correct, Mr. Sholmes? That is indeed what I told young Iris. But if you're Mr. Sholmes' partner, father, and you wrote all those case notes, then Iris' father must be you. Upon my word, Mr. Sato. You are coming along wonderfully as well. You too have hit upon the method at last. You have finally grasped the art of deduction.
But
what you've always told me, father, is that my mother died when I was born 16 years ago, and you left me in grandmother's care whilst you embarked on your study tour of Britain. And I've always accepted that. But all this about Iris. Oh, there it is. Susato-san's ice-cold stare.
No, hold on a minute. It was a very complicated. I mean, it's really not what you think.
Then perhaps you'd like to explain exactly what it is. There it is. Now the eyes go from ice cold to red hot. Just before she...
No, really, you've got the wrong end of the stick. Sholmes, say something, man.
That's quite enough, my furry fellows. Mr. Sholmes? When did he get all dressed up? Whilst I don't like to interrupt this exciting exploration of the past, Megatoba and I have an urgent matter that requires a short excursion. But it's very late, Mr. Sholmes. Where must you go? Why, my dear madam, is that not obvious? My partner and I must pursue our natural enemies. So, get your coat, Megatoba. The game is afoot.
But Sholmes, I really must give Sasato a full explanation, I think.
Later, my dear fellow, later. Our carriage awaits downstairs already.
You haven't changed one iota, have you? I mean, really, I visited our home after 10 long years, and when I opened that chest in a fit of nostalgia, I quite inexplicably passed out. And as if that wasn't enough, when I eventually regained consciousness, I am plunged straight into all of this.
Father, please. Go with Mr. Sholmes now.
What?
I've no doubt that whatever happened, you were acting in everyone's best interests. I trust you, completely.
Sasato.
And sending the great detective and his great partner off on renewed adventures together is more than I could have hoped for in my wildest dreams.
Very well then. We'll speak again later.
So, I believe your own work is done for the day. I wish you the best of luck for tomorrow.
Yes, Naruhodo. Good luck in battle, and in reaching a decision.
A decision about whether to go back to Japan, I suppose.
So much happened that day that I barely knew what to do with myself. It would only be later that I'd come to realize how amidst the chaos I'd unleashed were all the clues I needed to finally unearth the truth, and that all the turmoil was necessary to give me the resolve to see everything through.
The end. What? But we're not done. Oh!
Fuck her right in the pussy!